This is Seasons of Discontent with your hosts Rick Snyder and Matt Combs on the Hogstye Network.
Welcome to Seasons of Discontent. It's season 5, episode 10, brought to you by Rick Snyder's Washington on YouTube. I'm Rick Snyder.
And I'm Matt.
Man, we're here in a live studio kind of thing.
We're actually in the same room.
And discussing all things Washington sports and life as part of the mighty Hogstye Network on audio and YouTube, Rick Snyder's Washington on YouTube. For video that you're watching now, I guess. And don't forget to subscribe to Rick Snyder's Washington on Twitter for daily videos. And Matt and I just finished doing our How to Pick Crabs podcast and video. So you can look for that right there on Rick Snyder's Washington.
Yep.
Or anything else you want to watch on Rick Snyder's Washington, whatever. So last night was the Washington football team's final preseason game. They announced, an hour before the game, no starters would play. And I felt like grabbing my bag and leaving. And that would have been the smarter end.
Well, it's funny. We talked about a couple of times, like, how are they going to treat the preseason? Because now they cut down to 3 games. Were they going to treat that third game like the 4th preseason game and nobody plays? Well, that's exactly what they did. I like you said, an hour before the game, it was announced that Fitzpatrick wasn't going to play. Heineke wasn't going to play. McLaurin wasn't going to play. Nobody played. And Baltimore took it seriously and actually ended up having a really bad season-ending injury to their running back. So maybe it's a good thing. Who knows? Well,
I've seen so many players get hurt on a practice field that I don't worry about, preseason injuries. I wouldn't be playing your starting quarterback in the 4th quarter.
Right.
But, they're going to go 3 weeks now without starters having any live action when they get to the opening day against Los Angeles. And Los Angeles largely sat their guys too, but that's too much time for an offense that has no rhythm yet. Mm-hmm. I would have played the starters a little. And the other part is people pay real money to come see these games, and you gave them nothing.
Yeah.
There was about 20,000 at FedEx. I'd say maybe 3/4 were Baltimore fans, which meant there was 5,000 Washington fans or something.
Yeah.
And that really makes me wonder, because 2 years ago at the end of the season, there was nobody at the games. There was like 10,000 Redskins fans back then. And, last season didn't have fans at the games, really. So here we are for the first real one, the first 2 preseason games. Yeah, nobody really comes, but people didn't miss it that much because they didn't come. I the first game, Los Angeles isn't going to be bringing anybody in the Clippers. The Chargers.
Right.
So.
Hell, they don't even have fans in their own building because nobody's accepted to move to LA yet.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. I think the fans are still sitting on the fence and saying, show me what you got. And after watching that horrible show, the hard part of that preseason game is you can't use any of it to judge what's going forward.
Yeah.
Because they're cutting 27 guys as we speak, probably. And so everybody in that game isn't playing largely again. A few.
Yeah.
But it's like you want to say, oh, this is going to be terrible. And he's like, that has nothing to do. It's like you watched some other teams. Mm-hmm. That's the shame of it all. But they didn't get better.
And I know you were at the stadium, but I watched it on TV. Theismann and Kenny Albert, they were talking about it. It was basically an audition for the other 31 teams for a lot of these guys. It really. With the offense, we haven't seen Curtis Samuel in live action yet. I know he returned to practice and all that stuff, but we haven't seen him. He needs to develop a rapport with Fitzpatrick. Some of the surprises, I guess, they're hopefully they end up cutting Peyton Barber, because I think Jarrett Patterson deserves that job. But there's a huge battle at wide receiver, and basically for that 6th spot, I'd pretty much say it was between Sims and Antonio Gandy-Golden. Well, I don't recall seeing Cam Sims last night. I saw a lot of Gandy-Golden. They were definitely feeding him the ball. And, there's also the kid that Rivera's been talking about with what's his name? Milne. Dax Milne. Yeah. That's a guy right there that he's been hyping up too. So, does this team end up carrying 7 wide receivers? I don't think so. I think at that point you'd have to carry only 2 quarterbacks. And I don't know if you were really willing to do that.
Nah.
Because Kyle Allen could be stashed on the practice squad because the new practice squad rules, or the taxi squad, or whatever you want to call them. But I could see Kyle Allen as a formidable backup. Somebody would probably pick him up.
Yeah. You know why they called them taxi squads in the old days?
Why?
Because the Steelers owner owned a cab company.
Uh-huh.
And so when he needed to stash guys, he had them driving the cabs.
Oh,
and taxis, and then he'd grab them back when he needed them.
I thought he kept them in a hotel near the stadium and just taxied them in when he needed them.
No, they're all taxi drivers.
That's funny.
But I think Dax Milne makes the team. I wouldn't have said that a couple of weeks ago, but he's shown a lot. One of those guys, when the game starts, you see a different player.
So where does he fit in, though?
I think he's a receiver and a returner. I think he's your guy, which means you don't keep DeAndre Carter.
Oh,
I think you do that. And I think Cam Sims could be a surprise cut.
I think so too.
People want to think that he's made, but I haven't seen him do anything all preseason.
And also he's a J guy.
So I think he'll get picked up somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I could see him going. You could put Samuel on some kind of short-term IR. They have different rules now. Maybe you put him on some kind of list there. Because that groin, I was told in minicamp, but it's not a big deal. And training camp, not a big deal. Preseason, not, it's not a big deal until it's a big deal.
Yeah.
His big thing is that his conditioning isn't what they were hoping because he didn't get enough of it being out for so long. A groin injury, it's a weird thing to heal.
Yeah.
So I could see maybe that happening. Not too many people made a case for themselves last night.
Mm-hmm.
I think Danny Johnson, I thought he was going to be the returner, but I think if you get caught, you could cut him. Casey Tuhill didn't play, so he didn't get a chance. But, Jared Patterson, I felt like, please get off the stage. It's before things get worse.
Yeah.
He just didn't have a good day at all. I think he makes it.
Peyton Barber.
Yeah, right. I think Jared still makes the team.
I do too.
So I don't know. They're going to cut guys probably Sunday and Monday, and we'll see what's left. And then, this year you have a free week before the regular season. I could see still changing a couple players off the waiver wires.
That was going to be my thing. I mean, a guy that I obviously was watching yesterday was what's his name, Tyler McTire?
I think
Torrey. I think he makes the team. He played pretty well. I know he got a little banged up on that one play, but I think he'll be fine. That was one of the things, and I can't remember who said it on Twitter. I want to say it was Hogs Haven. The linebacking core after cuts is not probably the linebacking core that we see at the start of the season. I do believe, depending on cuts from other teams, we will see one or two new linebackers on this team because I don't think they're set there.
Well, I mean, Jamin Davis is going to start. I don't think he had a good preseason. Seems slow to react to things.
Which is funny because a lot of people do. A lot, like Pro Football Focus, I know they're very high on him.
I know. I mean, I'm not throwing him away. I'm just saying he's slower than he thought. Cole Holcomb, I think, is going to really step up this year.
Yep.
He can hit the snot out of people. Does that mean that Bostic no longer is your guy? I mean, they've been less on him, but he's been steady in the whole preseason. He's just what he is, but he's not a bad player.
Yeah, and they brought in David Mayo. I don't even recall hearing his name called a lot.
What they need is a linebacker who can cover a tight end coming out.
Yes.
That has plagued this team for years. I thought Davis could be the guy. I mean, maybe he is, but you need something there. And, the back four are fine. Landon Collins has really played well at times, and he's healthy again. And I think he appreciated the layoff, and he's doing better. All these guys have had a year in Rivera's system now. They understand it better.
Well, that's one of the things that has impressed me is Collins' turnaround from the injury, from getting the big contract. He didn't visit any other teams. He came straight to Washington when he got cut and released by New York and signed pretty much the next day. I mean, this is where he wanted to play. He always talked about how he was a huge Sean Taylor fan and he wanted to model his game after Sean. Well, now you're finally in Washington where Sean played, and let's be honest, his first year, he didn't really step up. So, maybe he could be probably one of the big surprising turnarounds and definitely a comeback player of the year candidate. As long as he continues to play the way that he has. I mean, he's out there flying around.
It was interesting that he said something at the end of his, presser. They bring guys into the press tent now, and we can talk to them at the podium. Still can't go in the locker rooms. I don't think that'll happen this year. They pretty much, the NFL said, only NFL-owned media can be in the locker room. Okay, so we'll see guys in the tent. But at the end of it, he talked about, they really needed to turn the roster around, which they've done. I think it's at 8 players of Gruden's, and we'll see after these cuts how many are still left. He said these guys just bitched and moaned too much. Worrying about this and that. We needed to change. I thought, very rare. Do you ever hear that kind of talk? And I thought that showed you a lot too. He came here and said, these guys are mentally weak. And they were. And
Club J. I mean, but Club J is over now.
But Club Ron is not as tough as I thought it would be.
But honestly, Rick, if you were a player, you've obviously talked to both of these coaches. Who would you rather? Who's the more motivating guy? A guy like Rivera or a guy like Jay Gruden? I mean, it's
Rivera.
obvious because when Gruden was fired by Carolina, it took till the end of the season before he was signed by Washington. Jay Gruden has still not been picked up as a head coach and probably will never be probably not be a head coach again in the league. I mean, Rivera is a motivator. He's got a story behind him, and guys know that he's won wherever he goes. So, and look, I'm sorry, you can't discredit his playing days. I mean, he played for the 85 Bears. The guy's hard nosed. We know that. But as I've talked about many times, we saw that, that clip. I've watched it a couple times where when the wide receiver for the Panthers, when his brother was murdered, he's out there having a bad day, picking fights with his teammates because he's just emotionally spent. And Rivera sat him down, talked to him. And, Rivera's a nurturer. Jay was just a figurehead. Jay's nothing more than an offensive coordinator. And I'm sorry, that's just what he is.
I think I expected more fire and brimstone out of Ron. Now, gets here and the offseason's canceled and then he has cancer.
Right.
Okay. It takes a little starch out of you. Yeah. And I would say, having been through a major operation myself, it takes you a year to feel like your old self. And he admitted that he's still a little tired and still being bothered by it some. So maybe that plays a little bit. He's a little older and wiser. He's not going to yell at you for no reason. He's a smart guy. He's taking care of them. He's taking care of players. We had a really hot week of practice last week.
Yeah, it was hot.
And he made them, he cut short a couple of the days because he said, all we're going to do is repeat stuff we've been doing, which just because it was like 95 degrees out in Ashburn. So they like them for those kind of reasons. They don't beat you to death. They don't beat players up in practice. The old days, Marty Scheidenheimer, 2 a day, full pads. You can't do that anymore. The NFL rules don't allow it. But Ron does take care of them. I think it's just been a little easier. He tells them, if you're going to be late, you got to call ahead, because something happened. So he's a little more understanding about that. The COVID thing is, I think they're up to 90% vaccinated now. So, so they're finally getting past that hurdle. Even like the Washington Nationals now said all team personnel have to have the shot now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, now that the FDA is it the FDA or whoever it is that approves this stuff.
Yeah. The FDA.
Yeah. Now that they
approved
mandated,
Pfizer.
You're going to see a lot more mandates on this kind of stuff. So we're finally moving past that.
Yeah.
But it is something. And I would say, Hopkins had a 55-yarder taken, and then he made a 48-yarder, but the timing's still off. And he admitted after the game, he's got a brother going through a serious medical condition that's bothering him. And so I'm trying to cut him some slack. We'll see. I know the fans just want to always move on to the next person, but I wouldn't move on quite yet.
Kicker is one of the most replaceable positions on a football team, and it just always has been. But yeah, like we talked about, guys, they already started making kind of surprising cuts when they cut Sims and they cut Harmon and, they cut Lamar Miller. Like, those are big names Lamar Miller was a big name in the league, and the other two were pretty big names for this team. So, they've already started making the advanced cuts. We saw Steven Sims sign with Buffalo. I did think that was just a replacement for the knucklehead up there who was protesting the mask, Beasley. I couldn't remember his name, but I don't know. It'll be interested with the week, like you said, with the week between the end of the preseason and the start of the season. We're going to see a lot more moves for this team, I got a feeling, and not necessarily trades, but like you said, pick up guys off the waiver wire.
Yep. And we got to move on. Make sure you go check out the crab picking tutorial that we taught you how to do this. And if you have any questions, email Matt about that. I'm Rick Snyder.
And I'm Matt.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Seasons of Discontent on the Hogstye Network.